Welcome, everybody, to another podcast on this Independence Day weekend. I hope everybody's having a wonderful Independence Day. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. This is Jason Seiler.
Dave Morrison.
Yes, that's us. How you guys doing?
I hope everybody's having a wonderful weekend. I'm sure there's probably not going to be that many viewers today because...
Don't let anyone in. When I do this, I prefer to have a little privacy. So I'm just saying.
No, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out doing stuff, which I hope they are actually, because last year at this time or earlier this year, we were told maybe, just maybe, you guys can get to hang out in small, tiny, tiny groups. That's what Biden said.
That's what he said. Yeah, so we look at our crowds here, and if we got like 100 people, we think, oh man, this is offensive. It's going to make Joe Biden feel bad. So we really are more comfortable with 6 or fewer viewers. And if you guys wouldn't mind, if you would be fully masked, also wearing a hijab, and put a sleeping bag upside down over your head, so you just like walk around the house bumping into things.
That's right.
We would feel like that was the proper safety consideration.
We don't want anyone giving us COVID through this live stream. That would be awful.
Of course, just 5 minutes ago, Jason's going, no, move it a little closer. You're out of the camera shot.
That's right. The thing about TV, or this, I will call this TV, is you got to be a little closer together than you think to get in the shot. Or if not, then we look like we're really far apart. Plus, the camera just doesn't go that wide. It's a small little camera.
I used to notice that in old movies where they'd be like shooting through the windshield of a car, and the people are like, these two macho guys are sitting where there's about a foot between their shoulders.
That's right.
And I guess they didn't have wide angle lenses or something.
And they're driving, and the guy's driving like this the whole time.
Yeah.
The steering wheel's just nonstop turn. Like that car would have been.
Well, that would be like the fake one.
Yeah.
So I guess most of those were fake. Occasionally, you'd see like a cow fly across the back, like the guy just like it just come flying over the.
That's right.
Just come flying over the car.
That's the good time. That was good television back then.
So is anybody out there? Or is it just us here?
We got 50 people right now tuned in, which is awesome.
Call a friend, and if you tell 2 people, and you tell 2 people, and they tell 2 people.
Yeah. So what do you got planned for this Independence Day?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Well, I don't do anything. Like I was doing laundry last night, and when I do my laundry, I go out and walk around. Like I'll start the one cycle. I'm at the laundromat. I start and I have this route that perfectly takes me a half an hour to walk. So I go do that, and come back, and I come in. It's like, all right, only 1 minute to go. I'm in spin cycle, and then I change that out, and I go walk again. Like this is a Friday night for me.
So you get your exercising in along with your
yes, but
laundry.
It's all very carefully planned out. And the route that I went on went close to the country club in my neighborhood, and I noticed that all these people are sitting outside, and they're all staring off into this direction. And I didn't put it together in my head that because it's not 4th of July yet.
That's right.
I didn't put it together in my head that this thing is a couple of days in advance. So I walk by these people, and it's a couple of old Armenian gentlemen, and I go, so are the aliens landing tonight? And they looked at me like they had no idea what I meant by that.
Yeah.
It might have worked with a non-Armenian audience.
That's funny.
It was like the people in Close Encounters where they're out waiting for the aliens to show up. They're sitting in lawn chairs,
just waiting for it.
So that's what it looked like.
So, well, I'm gonna have some friends over tonight, this evening. One other friend and his family. We're gonna hang out and barbecue, and that's pretty much it. But get some rest.
Yeah. I mean, I'll do a little something. I don't know what. I might go to the beach tomorrow or something like that.
Well, it's a tough day to go to the beach.
I think I'm a little bit sunburned? I can't tell. I think this is just making me look more sunburned
You're a
than
little,
I actually
well, you're a little
am.
darker than you normally are.
I went
I haven't
down.
seen you in a long time, actually, face to face. It's been months.
Well, I decided I needed to do something about my like corpse-like pallor that I had from being locked up in the dojo for so long, that I thought I just have to go down to the beach, and because I have a bunch of reading to do for the channel, and I thought, well, I'll just do this at the beach. And so I drove on down to the beach, and then I got really absorbed in the book, and I woke up with a little bit of a sunburn. So.
Well, tomorrow is going to be a rough time at the beach. I remember going to the beach on getting stuck going to the beach because traffic was so bad that we missed the fireworks and had to watch it from the highway.
That's when you know you're living in the greatest country on earth.
There you go.
That's when you know that you are observing it in the way that our forefathers would have wanted you to observe it. And if you can bitch at the wife a little while you're doing that and yell at the kids, and the kids are in the back, he's touching me.
America. So what's going on? What do you want to talk about today?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do want to send a shout out to our friends down in Florida. I feel really, something's been haunting me all week with that building that fell down in Florida.
Yeah.
When I was in the studio last week, I was working for 2 days in the studio, and the first day that we were there, I had an awful lot on my mind, and I'm there with some musicians I don't really know that well, so I'm trying to like joke and make funnies and stuff like this. And somebody pulled up a picture of a building that had fallen down in Florida and said, yeah, this friend of mine was right across the street from the building that fell down in Florida. And I hadn't heard the story yet. And so I made a smartass remark. Like I said, what, they didn't send you before and after pictures? You know, like somebody would know a building was going to fall down. Because I didn't know that it was like this giant tragedy. And all week long, that I wake up in bed and go, I actually said that to a person I don't know very well. They think I'm a monster.
Right.
Because I hadn't heard the story. So I have to email them. You know that dumb thing I said? And they probably don't even remember it. But
right. Yeah, it went out. Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, we're up just about to like Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bombing kind of numbers with this thing.
How many died in Oklahoma City?
I think it was 168. Fact check me on that, guys, if I'm wrong on that. But I think that's just the number that's in my head. I could be wrong about that. 168?
I don't know. I can look it up here.
And it's the same kind of thing. Many of these people are children. You know, there's people just going around their normal jobs. And normally you think at a government building you wouldn't have that many children, but they had a daycare center there.
Yeah. Oh, in Oklahoma City, right?
In Oklahoma City, right?
No, it's a crazy thing. I read some more information about it. I guess that there was some 168 people. Good job on that.
168 people.
I guess there were some people who are they checked it out and saw that there was some concrete that was really bad at the base of it, and then it never got remedied. And they said they came back again, said, oh, it's even worse now, and then now it's collapsed.
Well, you know that if Ron DeSantis decides to run for president, we'll hear every detail about how this wasn't caught in time, therefore proving that Republicans, with their idea of laissez-faire small government, this is what happens.
Right.
This is what happens. Buildings fall down. Do you want buildings falling down? Well, if you do, vote for Ron DeSantis.
You know that's coming for sure. Patrick Kane said last week, came in at 10 minutes left. I feel lucky today. Love you guys. We don't always agree. You're both always on point. Happy Independence Day. Well, happy Independence Day to you too, Patriot.
Thank you,
Kane.
Patrick. I got to go.
Yep. I'm out.
We're out of here.
So it's only a 10-minute video today. Sorry, guys. No, that's funny.
Mostly we get things like, I came in and watched the whole thing. Now I feel like I've been dragged behind a car.
Yeah.
I feel like my life is all ruined now that I listened to the entire thing.
Daniel said, hi, guys. Finalizing my escape from high-tax Long Island this week. Going to a job interview in North Carolina. We did nothing wrong on January 6th. Right.
Little editorial thing on the end there.
I wasn't there on January 6th.
One more thing. One more thing, Daniel. Epstein didn't kill himself.
There you go.
Just, you could end a sentence with those two factoids.
Good luck in your job interview in North Carolina. And yeah, get out of that high tax state, New York, man. It's it's like California. I'm still looking and trying to figure out what I'm going to do.
The only thing is this is the only place we can have any influence is if every conservative leaves every blue state, then you just have two perfect oppositional bubbles who hate each other. The only way we're ever going to have some sense of Americanism is if we begin to go, okay, I got to talk to this guy again. I really disagree with all of his stuff. And then you do it anyway. And then you go, okay, you move him a little bit in your direction, and you call it a good day's bargaining. I mean, the whole country is based on that. It's based on bargaining, not based on we'll dig our heels in over there, and you dig your heels in over there, and we'll just scream insults at each other. That's so not what the founders wanted. And here on Independence Day, we should be thinking a little bit about, okay, what was the design of the country? And maybe we should make a little bit of an effort to do what the founders did, which was they worked really hard to compromise. There's this great book called Friends Divided. It's about John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. And miraculously, these guys both died 50 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence to the day. They both died on the same day. And these were,
wow.
if you look into John Adams, he is the prototypical conservative. He wanted we'll stay with kind of a parliamentary system like we had in England, but we'll just change the things we didn't like about it. And Jefferson is the prototypical liberal, and we'll change everything in every way. And it was these two guys and others who haggled back and forth with endless long letters, got mad at each other, badmouthed each other, and eventually learned how to work together, that gave us this country.
Well, I think I don't want to leave California because I don't want to talk to people or discuss issues. It's because we're so far down the left hole, it's the taxes are going to be so high, the rent and the housing is so high, the schools are teaching, going to be teaching critical race theory and transgenderism to children. And it's just, I think that's my main reason. It's not about, I like the discussion. If you check on my videos, I often talk to the people who disagree with me because they're the ones that are the most interesting. They make the most interesting comment because I can try to make some headway. A lot of times I don't, but
you are exceptionally good at that. That's one of the reasons I was first interested in you when we didn't know each other. You're exceptionally good at arguing your points without calling names.
I try not to insult because, and I try not to take their insults as insults because it just,
if you do anything wrong, you back them into a corner so thoroughly that they have no way out, and then they start screaming insults at you.
Yeah.
And
well, that's when they actually had to get to the point where they considered what I was saying, because now they're mad or they're offended or they're upset.
They're completely out of arguments.
But no, I think people leaving Long Island or these kind of places, it's not because we don't want to fight the good fight, let's say, or it's because of these other things that come along with it being such a large majority of Democrats, let's say. Right.
But there's still Republicans in California, but there's just not as many of them. So I mean, it's a hard thing, and I get it. I mean, this brings us to the idea of, for instance, the homeless problem. There's this guy named Bonin. What's Bonin's first name?
He's a councilman.
Yeah, he's a
Mike
councilman.
Bonin.
Mike Bonin. And he's a councilman right in the area of Venice Beach. I think he's in Westchester, and it's sort of the surrounding area from them that is his district. And so the homeless problem is completely at a fever pitch in this guy's district. And he is the guy in the city council who's always saying, well, we can't impinge upon their rights. We have to. I just heard him talking the other day, and he's going, look, I know what it's like that now all the parks where you want to take your kid out, you want to take them down and put them on the swing set, but there's homeless people that made a tent out of the swing set.
That's right.
But we're all broken inside. There's, and I know he's probably a sweet guy. He's probably a nice guy. He probably is feeling empathetic about these people. And there's some reports that he himself once used to have a drug problem. So he does have empathy, but it's his It's to Jason's point about California. He's not balanced out by anybody else in the city council. So he goes in there and makes these pleas, and everyone goes, okay, well, we'll kick the problem of the homeless down the road another few years. And now we've just got shanty towns all over town. It's like this new song I wrote, hard times in the land of plenty, shanty towns blooming by the side of the road. Real solutions, man, we haven't got any because there's an echo chamber where the brain trust should go. We need Republicans to be in the state house, not Republicans to all move to Nashville.
But it's hard to get into the state house.
It's hard to get into the state
That's the problem.
house. I mean, we may have, California may very well, as Jason believes, and as I think he makes a pretty compelling argument, that we have passed the tipping point. And so that does argue for all of us leaving here, leaving it to its own devices so that California then can stand as an example for all the rest of the states who are now purple. Did I just talk myself into moving out of California?
I think you're in Tennessee, and if you
I make good points. I make good points when I'm steel manning my own arguments.
Getting back to your this homeless issue here, I brought up on the screen right here. This is from Fox 11. The funny thing about Mike Bonin is they found an email where he's trying to get a homeless person to move from in front of his office, right? So
they're doing it on the sly.
Right, yeah, they're hiding it. See, the leaked email says, in part, we have a person permanently staying in front of our office who's disruptive to our ability to work and blocks the entrance. Would this be considered an interference with the business trespass? Please let me know as soon as possible. So he needs, when it bothers him,
right,
he needs someone to move.
Exactly.
When it bothers us, it's like, come on, man, have a heart.
Yes, exactly. And Bonin's office gets literally hundreds of these complaints from everybody else every week because the homeless people are in front of everybody's business.
That's right.
They're everywhere in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's outside of the place where I work, and I also drive a lot. So everywhere I go, it's just every underpass from the highway is chock full of people. Every park has tents. There's some sidewalks where it's like Skid Row, but it's just out in the middle of just a regular street and not downtown somewhere.
Venice Beach, all the grass stuff along Venice Beach has been covered with tents for very many months. And now they're starting to move some of those tents out of there, and the grass is completely dead underneath where the tents have been sitting, of course, because they've got no sunshine or water. And the people have sabotaged down there, the sprinkler systems because the sprinklers were going on in the middle of the night when they first started camping there. So they just broke all the sprinklers.
Right, of course.
And I swear we can move on from the homeless pretty soon, but it's a big thing. It really is.
Here in California,
it's like such a demonstration of why you need both people, because it's so much an issue that really needs a conservative view and a liberal view finding their way to some kind of a solution. I'm leaving. I went to have some flyers printed yesterday at the Kinko's, right? So I'm leaving, and I turn on KFI News. KFI, if you live in Los Angeles, KFI is hilarious. So they have the news guys going down. He's talking about the traffic problems, and we got a stall on the 5. Apparently some looky-loos, and he goes, and also there's a homeless encampment, and that's slowing down. And he goes, and we got another one. But what it was is they had 2 homeless encampments on fire. There were 2 homeless encampments on fire that were causing looky-loo slowing in rush hour. Now wait a minute. We're coming into fire season. We are so poorly managed in California because they can't build any reservoirs because there's this tiny little thing called the snail darter, which will become unhoused.
I thought it was the Delta. I thought it was the Delta smelt.
It's that, or it's the snail darter.
They got another one. They got another one.
Tiny little
they got
fish.
another one now.
Whatever the tiny little fish is, because they believe the whole ecosystem will crash. Well, we're part of the ecosystem, and our ecosystem is crashing every time one of our villages gets burnt to the ground because of poor forest management.
Well,
There's not enough water to fight these fires.
Let's talk about the upcoming recall election. But first, Lou wrote, people in charge use divide and conquer, the divide and conquer plan. Absolutely, Lou. That's you're either with us or you're against us, right? You can't be in the middle, and it's tough. It happens on both sides. It happens a little more on the left, but it is tough. And it really squanders good debate and conversation. So,
But yeah, the fire issue. So we got Gavin Newsom, and he's coming up on a recall.
I'm gonna bring this
So
up.
I'm just going to say, so they just announced yesterday that they had decided when the recall date is going to happen. Now, normally recalls happen in late October to early November, right?
Yeah.
So when are they going to do this one?
September 14th of this year. Pretty quickly. It's coming quick.
So what's happening right now with Newsom?
Yeah.
There's this recall election coming up that he's going to face. He's going to face a recall, right? And what is he just came out with I think it's 2 weeks ago now. Oh, look, we just found billions and billions and billions of more dollars, much of it federal, by the way, and we're going to be giving it as gifts to the citizens of California in all different increments. But this will take a couple of months to get all these gifts out. So he wants to time this thing so it's well before the peak of fire season, and it's well before the peak of air conditioner season, where people are having rolling brownouts because we won't build any new power plants. So that it's the worst time to be a governor, right around late October to early November, because it's really super hot out here by then, and we have the most dry tinder and the tinder.
It's definitely dry.
Timber.
Timber
and timber.
both.
So he's working us.
They're definitely playing it for the best chance to beat Republicans.
Oh yeah,
and to beat this. And yeah, I mentioned in my last video, he's actually decided he's going to give everybody money, but we didn't hear about this until the recall election actually came about. And then it's like, you know what? Everybody needs $600 or $1,200. How about I give that to you? Because I'm doing so well. We got $75 billion. I'm the best.
Yeah, I just been so distracted running the state that I forgot to look at our state budget, but I just stumbled over to the budget drawer, pull it open. Oh my God, it's filled with billions and billions of dollars.
He's like, you know what else I want to do? I think I'm going to spend $500 million to clean up the forests a little bit so the fire season won't be as bad this year. It's like, oh yeah, you want to clean up the forest like Donald Trump used to say, like Republicans have been saying for a long time. Now it's the actual thing you want to do. But no credit given to remember Trump was called crazy for saying, I think he used the term rake the forests. Everybody's like, oh, someone's supposed to be out there with a rake and they're going to be raking the forest.
I suppose we rake the forest while we're drinking bleach, right?
Right. And now it comes out, yeah, that's what you have to do. You have to manage have to manage your forests. And it's a shame that this will not be brought up on in the mainstream media. But what's good about this article you sent me that we just looked at, I'll bring it up one more time. This is NPR, and
they say right at the front,
earlier date puts GOP at a disadvantage in California recall election. They're straightforward on this, and that's a good thing.
And they're probably doing that because they're hoping to, let's give people all a cheerful headline.
There you go. It's like, it's not going to make a difference, so we might as well do it.
All right, as long as we're beating the GOP, who cares if everything burns down? As long as we're beating those damn Republicans.
That's right.
Oh, man.
So, now, I don't think you know anything about the big controversy that was happening. All right, I don't know if you know about it or not, but Gwen Berry, she was a hammer thrower, and she got third place in the Olympic trials, and so they had to stand
with the weed.
They had to stand. No, they had to stand. They had to stand on the podium, and then the national anthem came on, and she said she got set up. She didn't realize it was going to be the national anthem, and she turned her back and put like activist athlete on her head, and
what, like a hat or something?
No, like a T-shirt she put over her head saying activist athlete, and she was so offended that this happened, and she's not. I mean, this is her 15 minutes, right? She's doing this because she's a third place hammer thrower in the Olympic trials. She's not going to be on the podium at the Olympics. She's third place in our country, right? She's not going to beat the other two girls from our country, right? And if one of them make it to the podium, that's going to be awesome. So this is her 15 minutes, but of course, this is what happens is when you decide that you're going to do this thing and piss a few people off, then people dig through things you've said and the things you've done in your life. And so
and round it goes.
Right. And so, she said one time here, I'll pull this up real quick. she tweeted, "Little white boy being bad as hell. I would smack his blank, then stomp him. Shaking my head. White people's kids, hella disrespectful." Right? So she said something about Mexicans just don't care about people. Just saw a girl wearing heels with white socks. What the hell? Chinese people always try to start new trends. Shaking my head. It's like,
so basically, she's a straight up racist.
That's right.
Right.
Right. And so
publicly so.
That's right. And what makes sense is now you understand why she's offended about the American flag and the national anthem, everything. It's because she's this hateful, hating person, right? She's the racist. And
and you have to wonder how much her racist attitude has been created by people telling her since she was a little girl that people hate her because of her color.
That's right. Of
course. How much does that create a person like her?
Of course, it absolutely creates it.
It used to be she would just run down the street throwing hammers at people, and then someone said, "Hey, you could do that in the Olympics.
You could be a good hammer thrower."
I don't think turns up and it's a different kind of hammer. Yeah. I got my hammer at Home Depot. What? Not good enough for you?
She's just throwing it in her backyard. She's warming up. Look, I'm good at this hammer throwing.
Hey, man. Hey, look, I made my hammer stick into that white boy's head.
Oh, that's funny.
It's got weird. This cultivation of racial separatism that's been going on since I was a child.
That's right.
It's just, I saw something the other day, and I don't want to make this sound as an indictment about black guys, but I've seen this like 3 or 4 times in my neighborhood now, where I'll go down the street and there'll be a black guy, and he'll just start crossing the street. And what he's doing, he's just making people stop.
That's right.
And then, and I go, that's kind of weird. I never noticed that as being a black thing before. And then I saw these guys yesterday. I was going down Los Robles, and I saw a black guy and a Hispanic guy come to the edge of the street. And the black guy just walks out in front of my van, and the Hispanic guy's just waiting by the side going, dude, there's a car coming.
That's right.
It's some kind of a thing about, let me see if this white person in a white minivan will stop.
It's like a challenge.
It's a little bit of a challenge.
They're challenging you.
It's like I'm
right?
showing that I am worthy of respect.
Right. So, and you're not going to yell, right? You're not going to yell at your car, "Get out the way, a-hole," or whatever, right? Right. And because if you did, then that'd be a huge scene.
Right.
He'd be, "Oh, what? You want some of this?" It'd just be one of these big things.
His buddy's waiting on the side going, what's this guy up to?
Right. Well, I see homeless people do this quite a bit, where they just start walking across the street. They got their cart behind them.
Yeah, it's like, deal with me, man.
And I feel like I give them a little bit of a pass because a lot of times they're so messed up on something that they don't know what they're doing. They're just trying to get back to wherever they think their place they're staying's at, right? They're so messed up. But yeah, I see these people it's like they walk slow. They're not walking fast.
No.
They're walking slow. They're like, yeah,
maximum
honk your horn, I dare you. It's like that's what they're saying as they're doing
making you stop.
That's right. No, it's like they're challenging us, they're challenging society.
And who can blame them if they are told all of their lives that there's an organized effort to keep you failing throughout your life? It's a human trait to say, look, I'm not doing that well. Now I'm beginning to see there's people twisting the screws behind my back, screwing with me, and they all have white faces.
That's right.
Of course people are going to be resentful. If I'd been just filled with propaganda my whole life, and I used to be, when I was on the left, I was filled with propaganda about conservatives, and it took working for them over the course of 5 or 6 or 7 years where I started saying, I'm not seeing these stereotypes. These people are really nice, and they're as nice to their Mexican gardener as they are to me.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing this bigotry and racism here. Maybe I'm getting fed a line.
Yeah.
And I bit by bit realized I was propagandized.
And I think you got to think that a lot of the African American community, they're somewhat secluded. They're somewhat separated from everybody in their own little areas. So they're only getting some of them, not everybody, of course, but some of them are only getting a few interactions. Right. And so they don't get a chance to see that. They're not getting to go work for a conservative family and say, oh, yeah, I worked at that guy Jason's house. I did some, roofing for him. And that guy treated me great. Yeah. They don't get a chance to do that. because they're told that they can't even get that job, so they're not even trying. A lot of these people, they're saying, "Oh, I'll just do my thing because no one's going to hire me anyway." They're getting fed that. It's not true. Go do a good job and you'll get hired.
Not only that, you have a real advantage now because so many people of goodwill are trying very hard to do one of two things. Either they're trying to prove that they are not racist, that would be the lowest motivation, or they're genuinely trying to throw some extra help into the black community.
That's right.
And like I have a guy that I give to in my neighborhood. He's a homeless guy, but he's a good dude. Never asked me for any money. His name's Darren, right? And he happens to be black. So I get to the store today, and I'm going in to get my Big Gulp, right? And I always make sure I have $1 with me to buy the Big Gulp and an extra $1 for Darren. You know, and he's only there once in a while, but I always make sure I have a $1 for him. So I get there, and on the way in, there's another guy asking me for money, and he's outside, right? And I go, well, I just said, okay, I'll catch you on the way out. And he also happens to be black, young guy. So I go inside, and like I'm getting my Coke, and Darren is in there, and he's buying a freaking lotto ticket. All right, so Darren's in there buying a lotto ticket. So I like stay out of his view, so he can't see me buying a lotto. So he buys his lotto ticket. He's going outside, he's scratching his thing, and he's distracted by that. So I like buy my Coke because I've already promised the other guy I'll give him Darren's buck. So I sneak back out there and give it to the other black guy. So this is how I manage the poor in my neighborhood. You know, now I'm guilty that I wasn't there for Darren when he needed more lotto tickets.
He needed another lottery ticket. That's his way.
I mean, there's reasons why people end up homeless, and Darren is the sweetest guy you can imagine.
But he spends his money on lottery tickets.
He spends his money a lot, and you see that all the time. You see homeless people all the time, and these, you know, like my main lens looking at the world is convenience stores because that's the great leveler.
Well, could you imagine a homeless guy like that? Maybe not like him, but a homeless guy winning $500 million in the lottery, like how quickly that would get blown and how he would spend that and how, I mean, there's regular people who
he'd be on Cribs the next night.
That's right. The next night. And then a week later, he'd be back on the street where he's totally blown it all.
Totally. And this is just why we as conservatives come down so hard on values from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
You teach values from the get-go. You know, you give the kids tough life lessons when they're young so that they'll understand them, so that when the lessons become a lot more, when they've got a lot more stake in life's lessons, when they're a young adult and they're beginning to get some money together, or when they're later in life, that they have learned those lessons and they make sure that they take care of things. So you got to give it to them when they're young, when not giving them their allowance because they smarted off to their mommy.
It's almost
it is something that they're realizing. Oh, if I do bad things happen to me, I better do good.
It's almost like learning a new language. You know, if you learn a new language when you're a 3-year-old, if your parents speak to you in Spanish and English, you'll pick up both languages pretty easily. If you never try to learn a new language and you're 35 and someone says you should learn Spanish, it's like super difficult. And that's kind of the same thing as an adult. If you never learned to take any responsibility or pay the consequences for anything you've done, when you're 40 years old, then what do you expect? You're going to do really stupid stuff, and one day you're going to find yourself in jail or in prison or out on the street because you made these decisions and because you never had to pay any consequences.
Right. And the left keeps telling us that they want schools to start earlier and earlier and earlier. And now it's 2 years before kindergarten. They want all kids to be in school because it is a formative time of life. But these very same people, you see them at the playground, and their kid hauls off and smacks some other kid, and they go over in there and say, "Oh, Cumberland, what, or, Algonquin, what are you, what are your inner turmoils today, son? Explain it to me." No, that kid needs to be communicated through the only thing he understands, his nerve endings. He needs to get a swat across the ass because he's not conceptualizing the world in a way that you're sitting there with a little tiny child asking him to self-reflect on what's made him frustrated enough that day to conk another kid over the head.
Right.
No, he doesn't. He's not at that stage yet. You need to teach him that there are penalties for doing wrong. Then later, as he grows up, he's gonna those penalties and the wrongs are going to be much more subtle. But he'll still have that stuck in his head that if I do wrong happens to me.
Right.
So we spare the rod, right?
Patriot Kane also said, what happens if we move to the, this is from earlier, I didn't get to this, sorry. What happens if we move to the states the liberals evacuate? Do we get 50 years before they rush back to destroy it like they will do Texas and Florida? Yeah.
The liberals aren't evacuating California. You mean...
There are some, but...
Where are the liberals evacuating?
There are some liberals leaving California, but it's mostly conservatives and mostly people who...
They think it's turning into more and more of a paradise with every conservative who leaves.
Right. Although it's not.
It's not. I mean... maybe when the last conservative finally leaves, they'll just scoop all up those homeless people in like, what do they call it, skip loaders, and throw them on the back of trucks and ship them all to Tennessee.
Yeah.
So,
Rochelle, thank you. She said, y'all have yourself a goody good holiday. Let this 4th be with you, and eat well, enjoy, stay cool in California. Only 102 in Camp Verde, Arizona today.
That's cool.
Glad to see you both in one room, garage, ! Sincerely, Miss Rat. Well, thank you, Rochelle. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and don't eat too much, but eat a lot.
let me ask this, since we have Miss Rat on with us. Where did the custom begin that everybody virtually, hey, Guitologist is in the house, hey, Brad, that people online use avatar names? Did that come out of the gamers world or out of the chat rooms or something like that? I feel like it was something that got established before I ever got on YouTube. It never occurred to me to use other than my regular name. Of course, I surf under Blue Collar Logic, but that's because it's the name of a channel, and
that we're signed into. Yeah, I don't know. I do have one with my name, and I also have one with like Feeling Good Music that I started and never really got around to doing anything with, but it was dedicated to something. But Rat's Ass 67, maybe her nickname really is Rat's Ass, or
I'm thinking
Ratty,
not.
or
I'm thinking like that's not her real God-given name.
No, I know it's Rochelle's her real name.
Yeah, I know.
But I don't. But do people call her that? Who knows?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where that came from. It must have been like early. Maybe she was in a chat room earlier and something like that, where
you don't want people. You don't want people to know.
Culture started.
Yeah. Well, maybe because people were pretty scared online at first. That's true, because it was like when people, you would never meet someone online. Like if you met someone online and you said, "Oh, you want to meet in person?" It was like taboo, big time. You would never do that. Now it's like swipe left, swipe right. Yeah. Oh, I'll meet you tonight. Let's do this.
I came to the computer late. Plus, I guess I had a different motivation because I was at the time, I was doing my music career pretty much full time, and the reason I was online it wasn't full time in terms of it paying for itself, but it was my major hobby. Let's say I didn't have this channel, and. I lost my train of thought. Oh no! So I was promoting myself. So the name Dave Morrison, I wanted it to be seen everywhere.
Right.
Because it was also my brand name. Like maybe Rat's Ass is her brand name.
Yeah.
Maybe she has like Rat's Ass chocolate chip cookies in
Rat's
her
Ass
kiosk
socks
down at the mall. So it's a promotional thing.
Hey,
what's up, Jerry?
JC.
Oh, is that
that's JC?
Sorry.
Now, JC, the other day, Dave told me, he said, "I think you're saying her name wrong." When he's at his place and we're doing it through Zoom live, he can't see anything over here. So he hadn't seen your name in a long time, but he said,
"But I remember,
He's like, "I don't think it's Bridge. I think it's Brigda."
That's what I said.
Something like that. And sure enough, it's not Bridge. I've been misreading this the whhole time. It's JC Brigda or Brigda.
That's the thing, is I care, particularly about the little Dutch
people. Well, he
people
just reads better than I do. I think that's what it is. It's I'm from Kentucky, I'm from a hick town. There was no words like Brigda.
If you look at a word and you identify it even falsely, you won't look at that word ever that closely.
I never had to look at it.
Someone
that's right.
says, do you remember that the actor Jason Robarbs? It's Robards. I always thought it was Robarbs with a Robarbs. Jason Robarbs.
Yeah.
What's his name?
I don't know.
Something Robarbs. I just said it, but now I forgot.
Jason Robards?
Jason Robarbs.
I don't know.
And he had a son, Sam Robarbs. They were all, but it's not Robarbs. It's Robards. And when he passed away, I said, God, they're showing his his death notice and they're misspelling his name.
To you the whole
I
time.
felt all offended. I had gotten that wrong for my whole entire life.
Yeah. Well, JC says, greetings. This is what she reminds everybody. Holland's getting worse, especially now that after she lost her family in the Iraq war during the Obama administration. Now the radical ISIS women coming freely here and getting reparations. It's sad. That's true. I've read about some of it. Was happening in Sweden too. It happened in a few other places where these women leave to go be ISIS wives, and then they get let back into the country and without them worried about their terror ties anymore, which is ridiculous. And in this case, she's saying they're getting reparations.
Well, yeah, I wonder what she means by reparations.
Probably they're just getting welfare or that kind of stuff, because they're giving immigrants, some of these European countries are giving immigrants or people who are coming in from Syria or war-torn,
But some of those people were like Dutch citizens and they went off to join ISIS, right?
That's right.
And then they come back in.
And they want to come back in and everything's and pretend like everything's normal.
Yeah, the left is psychotic about. Well, I'm reading about China, guys, and so I'm reading this thing, this book, and it's 10 big fat essays written by one of China's greatest living novelists, and it's sort of a memoir growing up right in the middle of Mao's revolution, and it's fascinating to hear it told through kind of a spectator's eyes. But he put a quote in there from Mao, which said, "That which our enemy agrees with, we will disagree with, and that our enemy disagrees with, we will hold dear." Something like that. And that's what I used to say in that video I made. Why are they always wrong? Because they just look because conservatism is not an ideology. It's just a collection of all the things that have worked in the past. So you're just carrying forward things that have proven that they worked. Doesn't mean they're perfect, but it means on balance, they work better than not doing anything. So you carry those forward, and the left, really their idea is to look at everything conservatives are doing and do the opposite. Because the worst trouble you could get in Mao's China was to be seen doing something in a way that resembled life before Mao. What is that? That's conservatism. You're conserving the past. China wasn't perfect.
Sure.
But Mao turned it into a hellhole.
Right.
Just by getting rid of all the things that worked, because he was intentionally doing the opposite of everything. And then punishing people if they didn't.
That's right.
And then people would be ratting out each other for doing something that worked rather than something that didn't work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like what we saw at the beginning of, COVID was Trump shut down China travel, and they said, "What? I'm going to go to Chinatown and tell everybody everything's okay." And then
we're all going to China.
And then a month later, it was, "Hey, he didn't shut down enough stuff." It's like, well, which one is it, guys? It's like, oh, they couldn't make their mind up because they had to go against whatever he was doing.
And that's the thing. If you make change your primary obsession, and I've said this before on this channel, and my best friend in the world spent an awful lot of time as a left-wing activist, and I said this to her. I said, "Are there any heroes on your side of the aisle who aren't activists or weren't activists?"
Yeah.
And she just looked at me like, "I'm sure there are some," but she couldn't come up with one. And she's very astute. She's also very reasonable because she hangs out with me. So she's very patient. Maybe this is a long-term effort to finally convert me. I don't know.
Or maybe it's going to go the other way. Like Leo Terrell. I don't know if you all know who Leo Terrell is, but boy, he
switched over.
He swithed over. He's now the Leo Terrell 2.0.
I was watching the thing last night. It was a great debate between two very astute black intellectuals, Coleman Hughes and the other one, I forget his name, but he's a black intellectual. He was a Rhodes Scholar, and now he works for the ACLU. And they were talking about critical race theory. It's on the Braver Angels podcast site if you want to see it, and my friend John Wood Jr. is moderating. So you got three heavy-duty black thinkers talking about this, and with John moderating. And the guy who was on the left, he said, after Coleman Hughes just kept making these great points about how critical race theory is actually damaging to the people it purports to help. And he said, I'm agreeing with so much of what Coleman's saying here. He goes, I guess I'm on the side I am just because of a sort of internal tendency. He didn't say tendency. He said, what's the other word for that? Sort of
Habit.
Inclination. He said, maybe it's, I'm on the side I'm on because of an internal inclination. And I thought, that's what we've been talking about. There's some people that are just going to see things through this particular lens. But if you give them enough really good stuff put together in a way like a real talent like Coleman Hughes can put it together, they will begin to see the error of their ways, particularly if they're doing it in a respectful manner. If you're not yelling at them, you're treating them
and
with respect.
And if they're honest about if they're honest about their wanting to find the truth, right, and wanting to listen and wanting to make America the best it can be, and so on.
Jonathan Haidt is probably the king of talking across the aisle, and he says until he was 40, he'd never even looked into conservative beliefs.
Wow.
He says until he was 40, and by the time he was 50, he was a well-known expert in why conservatives are reasonable when they believe certain things. That it's based in their particular view of morality.
Wow.
And he was telling the whole country, look, don't write off conservatives. 10 years earlier, he'd never once even been curious enough to look into it. He'd just been surrounded by liberal thinking.
He had wrote them off for 40 years.
Yeah.
And then said, you know what, let me check this out just to see. And wow, that's amazing.
I mean, what an honest thing to say.
Anthony Velasquez wrote, thanks for the videos, guys. I am laughing at Dave's experience in Pasadena. It's getting worse here, but it's not to Venice Beach level yet. Happy 4th. Maybe Anthony's maybe he's in the Pasadena area.
Pasadena's pretty cool, man. I live in Altadena, which weirdly, there's people have never figured out what the word Pasadena means, but because it's in California, they assume it's a Spanish word. So when they needed to name Altadena, which is up the hill from Pasadena, they said, well, why don't we just call it High Dena? Because we someday we'll figure out what Dena means in Spanish. But for now, we're just going to, Alta means high. So they just called it Altadena. So it's like a contraction of a nonsense word that doesn't mean anything.
That's funny.
But Altadena is a great little town. It's like everybody's a libertarian. Most of them vote liberal, but there's cars parked on the lawn, and you can park a motorhome for a month on the street there, and like eventually they'll tow it away, but they'll give you like 50 warnings first. It takes a really long time. So it's really mellow.
Senor Nasuno wrote, I made a comment that someone disagreed with in a Facebook chat room using my real name. A few days later, came home after work, all 4 car tires slashed. That is some serious, crazy stuff.
I would.
Wow.
You may be, Signor, confusing correlation with causation. It might be that there's somebody else in your life who has reason to slash your tires, and that they did that, within a few days of you having that particular thing.
Well, I wouldn't put it past people.
Well,
I've had some people on Facebook say some crazy stuff and say they're going to do some crazy stuff. I'm sure they've done some stuff.
We'd need more information. Is it somebody that you knew? Because I definitely had arguments on Facebook with people who nobody slashed my tires, but a whole bunch of people did try to hurt me socially, like spreading rumors about me and stuff, which I think is a lot worse than slashed tires. So,
right. I wouldn't put it past it, but yeah, it might be hard to prove that that's who it was, but I
just wouldn't make the assumption necessarily.
But I'm sure it's happened.
Oh yeah, I mean, but
I'm sure it's happened.
I'll take 4 slashed tires before some of the stuff that's been told about me in Los Angeles.
Well, I definitely,
oh my God.
Don't talk about where I work and stuff out of the chance that someone's going to try to go to my work and make problems for me over this channel.
Right.
JC came back. JC Brigda, I'm assuming. I lost you, JC. I had the comment here. Reparations here mean free house, money to stay home, and the first 10 years free stuff. Free college of their choice and free attraction parks. So I guess that's amusement parks.
We're just
free
looking
food
to see if you're telling us how you pronounce your name.
So the next 10 years, we will pay for them. So yeah, so these people are getting 10 years like a head start because they coming from these places, these war-torn countries, and out of the goodness of the Dutch Parliament's heart. They're going to give these people 10 years, and they're giving people that they know have terrorist ties 10 years of help to get them sorted, and that doesn't seem right to me.
It's a pretty thorny problem. The whole problem of Europe, it's just like, why is everybody so reluctant to say, look, we have a culture that we value? And one of the reasons, especially if you're looking for something like the Netherlands, you get a fair amount of your dollar because of tourism. And the more that the place no longer looks like Holland, the more that it starts looking very different from Holland, the fewer tour dollars you're going to get, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
Because you don't go someplace just so it can look like every other place you've ever been.
That's right.
You need to maintain what's wonderful about your country. But since the left took over Europe, that is considered what I just said would be considered xenophobic.
That's right.
To say that I love my own culture, I value my own culture. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to value your own culture, because the implication is now you've said it's better than somebody else's culture.
When you go to Holland, you expect to see a bunch of tall white people riding bicycles. And if that's not the case, then you're going like, oh, well, if I wanted to go to this other area, I would have went to this other country. Right. But eventually it's going to be this.
But it's not the white people. It's the cleanliness, the culture,
Sure.
the over politeness, maybe certain things that you remember as being part of that culture.
Right.
And one of those things is not maybe that you have, like, for instance, I mentioned earlier that I had made a joke to these Armenian guys. So in the neighborhood where I live, it's 40% white. And 30% black, and the rest is a mix of Hispanic and Armenian. And the Armenians are way, way different to deal with. I grew up around a lot of Hispanics. So I have no problem making a joke with a Hispanic person. I have no problem making a joke with a black person. So I get along famously with both sides. But I have not been able to crack the code yet of Armenians. I mean, they look like they're mad all the time. Like, I was walking on the hiking trail, and there's two Armenian guys and then another Armenian guy in the middle. And the two guys on the outside are like shouting things at each other in Armenian. And the guy in the middle just walking along like, oh my God, I'll never get out of this. They seem like they're always mad at something. And I understand that this is a cultural thing, and probably they're not always mad. Maybe somewhere culturally they determined that it was safer to look like you're about to kill somebody than to look like you're, open to a dialogue. But it's really rare to find a friendly, outgoing Armenian. Now, is that a prejudicial statement?
I think that's true. I mean, they tend to live in groups with their own community and kind of, celebrate that community. We have a couple Armenian friends that my wife used to work with, and they're great. They're friendly. They're nice. But they're a little further removed from Armenia,
right.
and that's
it's culture,
and that's how it goes.
It's nothing to do with race. It's culture.
Right. That's right.
I knew a girl years ago named Nancy Maradian, and she was just like just like any other teenage chick, and her parents were these cranky, frowning Armenian people.
Right.
It's this cultural thing. So you want to preserve the culture. And in Holland, I'm sure they have certain cultural things. Now, if people are coming into the country and they happen to have brown skin, but are adopting the culture as fast as they can, boom, no problem. Because it's not about blonde people on bicycles, but it's about people on bicycles.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's the activity and the ways of doing things that you want to maintain. It doesn't matter about culture. I mean, color. But culture does matter.
Rochelle comes back with, by the way, rats don't rat. LOL. I can get back to you on the name. It runs deep. Dave, a rose by any other name stinks just the same.
Huh. Okay. I have got nothing to say. Rochelle has bested me with her incisive wit. But I was told recently, I was listening to a podcast, and I forget which one a guy it was, but it was somebody who sort of specializes in like winning arguments and persuasion techniques and stuff like that. And so they asked this person how they dealt with Twitter. And the person said, I have one rule. I don't respond to any comment except those made with a person's actual name. says anybody who's not using their actual name is just a non-entity to me on Twitter.
Hmm.
And he said, and my problem was solved overnight. That's what so I don't know. I haven't tested it out, but I think that maybe that has something to do with our problem in this country is people.
If your name is Stinky Face too,
you can anonymously
then you can
call
say
somebody,
anything you want.
Yeah, you're removed from any of the social sanction that you're putting on somebody else.
But also at the same time, you realize why they're doing it because, like you said, you were blackballed, if you will, by several people because of reasonable comments.
Yeah, but I still think you've used your own name too.
Absolutely.
And I still think that we're on the upside of that in terms of being gutsy because we're living by our own beliefs.
Black
and
Magic,
we're not hiding from it.
Black Magic says, my father came up blue collar rough like me. Now he only reads the New York Times and is convinced that Trump was against the working class. What would you say to him? Well, one thing I would say is look at the results of what happened with Trump's policies,
right,
which was the working class getting a lot more jobs and moving up. I'd say that's one way you could start that conversation. You know, black unemployment, all those things that they all went way down. Because
didn't Trump do better with blacks this time than he did before?
And Hispanics.
And Hispanics.
So I mean, I think there's a lot. It's hard to get by, TDS, if you will, right? Sometimes you just can't talk to somebody about Trump because just the word itself conjures up this feeling inside them that they have no longer can actually have a conversation.
Plus, I'd be a little bit interested in some of the details of your father's life. Like, did he grow up in a city where union was a very large part of his identity? Because in a lot of the Rust Belt states, people grew up and they were tied to the Democratic Party and to their union, and it became just a thing. Like, of course. And as they get older, maybe they just haven't noticed. Maybe your father just hasn't noticed how little attention is being paid to working class people by the Democrats.
Yeah.
And he might be retired and he might have come up and got his pension and retired out. And so he's still functioning out of an older paradigm. And that could be it, or part of it. And Jason's idea too, as well.
Yeah. I want to ask you something, Dave. Did you see where Biden won't grant Kristi Noem the ability to do the fireworks at Mount Rushmore this year?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
I didn't really hear much about that. I mean, I had heard somewhere along the line, because last year there was a controversy about the same thing, right?
Yeah, but last year it was because of the COVID.
Yeah.
Right? This year it's not about COVID. This year it's Biden hasn't said. So basically, if you want to catch you up to speed on it, Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota, says that during the Obama administration, they they would not allow her to do the fireworks out of environmental concerns. So after Trump came in office, she talked to him, said, hey, we want to do this again. And so they got with the EPA, did like a year and a half of clearing brush and all these things to do it, and then they did it, and then now
and there was no environmental disaster.
Do you ever remember a disaster happening at the Mount Rushmore?
No.
And if it's really about environmental, I mean, South Dakota is one of the cleanest places in America, right? So we should be talking about New York City or Los Angeles, or we should be talking about, Kentucky or some coal state. If we're going to talk about stopping their fireworks, if that's why they're doing it. Biden hasn't said why he's doing it, which makes me think he's going to fall back on that position. But it makes me think the only reason they're doing it is because that's a real patriotic thing, and that unites, people who love this country.
Well, I'm not sure that it's that cut and dried. But I do think it has a lot to do with when you do something in their face. The minute you're out of power, they will do the same thing back to you in your face. So, if you could say, like, I think like DeSantis would have said, well, can we figure out a way to work with this? And he said, well, we'll have a display, but we won't like go on and tweet about it, and we won't say anything about it. DeSantis is a genius because he just does the thing. He doesn't do it and do it in your face. He just does it. He does the same things that Trump would do. He just doesn't do them in your face. Because when you do it in somebody's in your face, now you have cost them face. Now, in order to regain face, they have to undo the thing. Like all of Trump's stuff that we like so much about him, one by one, they're all being erased. And that has everything to do with Trump's technique. So, I mean, you could say he was the greatest president ever. No, because these things won't stick. So he ended up not being the greatest president ever, but he made us feel empowered. He made the working class feel empowered. So my feeling is we have to now move to another person who will continue to make us feel empowered by doing all the right things, but won't piss off the people in a losing face type of way, in which they, when next time they're in power, must then undo everything. I know this is a little subtle.
Yeah, I think you know, once whoever, it doesn't matter whoever becomes the nominee, once they become the nominee, the hate is going to come out again from the left, and you know, like you said earlier, that building in Florida that collapse, it's going to be like, can you believe that he doesn't care about the regular people? He just he lets his buildings collapse because he hates.
Well,
that's coming.
Yeah, maybe. So, but it would be to a certain degree. But they have always disliked Republicans, and we have always disliked Democrats in terms of their policies. So we will blame things on them as well. Like we're always blaming them for crime in the cities and things like that, because we feel like they're responsible for that stuff.
Because they run the cities.
Whenever we can make a point about it, we do make the point about it. But we don't necessarily hate them with a blind fury that is going to cause every single person to come out. You know what I mean? And Trump played into the blind fury that they were hating him with, rather than, than playing against it and being charming and self-deprecating once in a while. He played right into the hatred, and that's why they had record numbers of people at the polls, because they just felt offended by him every time he opened his mouth.
But I also think
there's ways to get it done without getting it undone next cycle.
It would have been hard to be humble, I think, when your first announcement of running for president, they say, he just called all Mexicans rapists, and it's like, no, he didn't. What are you talking about? And it was from then on, it was everything he said was.
No, I'm not saying it wouldn't be hard.
Was changed to. It'd be hard not to be like, screw you.
So you're saying that.
It'd just be hard to do it when they take your words and they twist them not constantly. And until this day, they're still saying these same things that have all been totally debunked.
Right. But how many videos did I make correcting that stuff? I did over and over again. It absorbed us for literally years, and that's where that should take place. It should take place out in the culture, and a president can't continually do stuff to get even with the people who've insulted him, and it runs counter to the greater purpose of what's good for the country. And the whole thing is, being a president is really, really hard. You don't get to just go in there and go, well, okay, now my feelings are hurt, so I'm going to do something. I agree. I have complete sympathy for Donald Trump. The first thing I felt for him that made me move toward voting for him, I felt protective of him because I knew he was being slandered day and night.
Right.
And in the thing that's made so many people think that I'm now a traitor, I say it in that video. We supported him forever. I voted for him twice. We tried really, really hard to be the communicative base. And it's not that I ever turned on Trump.
Right.
It's just after a while, that doesn't work. Being a street fighter in government does not work because we are the minority party. I self-deprecate all the time. Does that mean I really think I'm a silly person? No. It's because it charms people. And then I get my way from them. I'll go on stage and I will just make myself the butt of so many jokes. And then afterward, people are telling me what a wonderful time they had. And I'm not doing that because I really have poor self-esteem. I'm doing that because it works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. I mean, if you look at anybody, how they handle any situation, you can always go back on it. Any situation I've been in, you can go like, man, why did you say this? Why did you react that way? And so on. So I agree with you.
But he never even like came and he never really argued the drinking bleach thing. Instead, he just goes, I was being facetious. Instead of just coming out and honestly saying, look, what I was looking for, I was like thinking of Listerine, and like if you look on that, it says that it's a disinfectant.
That was his
and
word.
we all gargle with Listerine. I was thinking something like that. It's the same thing. If you look up disinfectant and what's the other word? And antibacterial. Look, they're the same thing. They're the same thing. They're synonymous. But when we're talking about drinking something, we generally use antibiotic as opposed to disinfectant. We
Right.
usually think about it as Lysol. So they first started saying he wants us to gargle with Lysol. That was the first cycle of the slander.
That's right.
And then they upped it to he wants us to drink bleach. Then they upped it to he wants us to inject bleach. And Trump should have stopped that. He should have gone out there and said, look, you know what I was looking for. I was looking for this, the Listerine type thing, gargling with a germ-killing thing. I was looking for something like that. But he goes, oh, I was being facetious. Because he wasn't being facetious.
Right.
That was not approaching. He wasn't fixing the thing in the way that he should have fixed it. So he just left it sitting there. Because everybody knows he wasn't being facetious. So people who were taking that on says he kind of admitted it.
Yeah.
By not giving the proper. So I don't know, man. I don't want to get off on this thing because, poor Jason.
Poor Jason.
No.
Look.
Jason's trying to hold the channel together while I'm costing us
I
subscribers
mean,
because
it would have been. You've said this before, and I totally agree. If Trump could have did what he did to get elected, and then became more of a Ronald Reagan in approaching with the smile and like, come on, what are you guys talking about? And laughing at it and not feeling so much where you can see his anger because that anger doesn't translate very well. And it's easy for someone to say, look at him. He's angry. That picture we all see is, look, Trump's like that. There's that one picture, right? It went around the world. That was all. Everybody kept using that because, look, Trump's this big orange man bad and look at him.
Right.
And you never had a picture of Ronald Reagan like that. You had one of Reagan, and he was smiling. That guy was comfortable in who he was, and he's like, I'm not a racist. Obviously, I'm not a racist, guys.
And he was a true conservative.
Yeah,
he really was a true conservative. And Trump was probably influenced by Ronald Reagan. Unfortunately, Trump was also influenced an awful lot by Howard Stern. And so when you come up here and he came up at a period of time, and I think the people who continue at this time to write me notes cussing me out for criticizing Trump in any way, they came up in a time when they were surrounded by this trollish talk. They were listening to the more trollish of the AM radio hosts. They were listening to the people like Mark Levin. He won't criticize the New York Times in the same way that Dennis Prager would. They're both criticizing the New York Times, but Dennis Prager doesn't call them the New York Slimes. So you're lowering the level of dialogue. You're lowering it to the level of schoolyard dialogue. And Trump did that all along by calling people names. And see, of course, then that just lowers the level of maturity. And now the people who are attacking him go ahead and they lower their level. And then the people out there who are defending him in the blogosphere, they lower their level. And so we never lowered our level. At least I can say I never lowered my level. I never talked down to anybody, and I assumed that all of you guys can get the subtleties. And a lot of people, we were attracting people over the years that didn't care about the subtleties. They only were tuning in to hear me throw an insult at the left. And when I stopped, when I showed that I can also be objective about the right, they wanted me literally to be erased. And where does that get us? That's not conservative.
Right.
My parents were as conservative as they get. They never called people names.
That's right.
So I mean, we got to be the adults in the room here. Sorry, I don't mean to go off on
Black
a rant.
Magic. JC says, Black Magic, even the news in Europe, which is very radical left, telling Trump was for the working class, and he saved blue collar jobs. I'm a refugee, Iraq Muslim, lost my family in the Iraq War. So Black Magic, there you go. Even so, maybe he needs to learn Dutch and watch the Dutch news. Your father, Dave Beamer, says you guys rock. Thanks, Dave. We appreciate it. We try hard. That's for sure.
Well, the first thing that I remember really being impressed by Donald Trump was when he was beginning to actually run the country, is he gathered all those captains of industry in, and he asked them to make pledges of jobs, of job training. And they did. They went around this room, and all these guys, the Carrier air conditioners, really big companies, they all said, yeah, we're going to pledge to train 500,000 people in the next year. And I go, this is what we've needed all along. This is what we've needed. He was sounding like Mike Rowe. I don't, Twitter, I'm telling you, Twitter turns everybody into schoolyard brats. I see some people I really admire, and then I'll see their Twitter feed, and I'm going, wow,
yeah,
what's happening to these people? But if they'd have seen my Facebook feed 3 years ago, they'd go, wow, I thought this guy was a thinker. Well, now I realize he's an idiot.
Well, I think ultimately the internet, even if you got your own name on it, the internet still gives you that I can say it and I don't have to feel the consequences of it right away.
Yeah.
Like you were, if you were having friends over and somebody said something and you're like, well, that's the thing that idiots say. Like everybody be like, wow, you just do that in front of everybody? Like, and it wasn't a joke. You were really calling them an idiot in front of all your friends right now and calling everybody out. But that's kind of what the internet has done. And that's been bad it's been good to get out some things in the truth, some of the truth out there, the internet, but it's also been very bad in how it's let people become somebody that they never were in their real life.
Yes.
Right. Which is, a lot of people are respectful, nice. They live their daily life like that, and then they go home and they go like, look at these libtards. And it's like, yeah, but the guy who just checked you out at the grocery store was a liberal, but he wasn't a libtard. He was just a guy just a guy who voted for the other candidate, and he's a nice guy. And we're doing it on the right, they're doing it on the left, and it's a detriment, and it's going to be something that's going to be really hard to overcome, because you got the censorship and that kind of stuff that's going to happen, and that's going to cause us to go more and more into our own. Oh, I go to MeWe or Gab, and you go to Facebook. I go to Rumble, and you go to YouTube, and so on. It's gonna go further and further that way, and before you know it, it's going to be, oh, you drink Coke? Oh, he's a liberal. Oh, you drink Pepsi? Oh, he's a conservative. Oh, you watch golf? Oh, it's probably a conservative. Oh, you watch NBA basketball? Oh, liberal.
Well, you see me do it with Apple computers, right?
There you go. That's the same thing.
It's not perfect.
Although I have an Apple, but yeah.
If you are in the arts or in music, it's Apple. You use Apple. But if you're in a coffee house writing a screenplay, the Apple signals liberal here.
That's right.
Not necessarily. I know, in all the ways that we stereotype, there are some differences. But when you see me walking down the street with the double gulp in my hand, you can pretty much assume that I am probably not, the guy that drinks in Fern bars and is a vegan.
That's right.
And if I'm not drinking in Fern bars and I'm vegan, you can probably figure I'm not, progressive. Progressive wouldn't walk down the street with this. They'd be ashamed to be seen with it.
Yeah, it's a 7-Eleven right on there.
Not only am I admitting that I actually go to convenience stores with regular people, but that I drink a big damn cup, and it's the biggest size there is
of soda that's just made up of all these chemicals and so bad for you and the environment.
I've had so many women over the years just come up to me and go, I need to talk to you about your consumption of Diet Coke. And they'll give me this stuff, and I go, check back in 10 years and see who's still running to the top.
You should have come to me 15 years ago or 20 years ago and checked my consumption then. That'd have been really different.
Yeah, I took the rum out of it. At least I took the rum out.
Right. No, the division. The internet's definitely creating this divide that I don't see. it's going to be hard to come back to, because every election cycle, this one side's going to say this guy's the devil, the other side's going to say this guy's the devil, and so on.
Well, Bill Whittle
And
said a very important thing the other day, and he said, he goes, my the only thing I can change their mind about, I'm paraphrasing, is their picture of my own humanity. He's, I can't change their mind about issues. And his point was, we're on the right side of virtually every issue. And by right, I mean correct. We are on the correct side of virtually every issue. What holds us back is their ability to have, over the years, turned us into, in each other's minds, people not worth even communicating with, that we're so bad. And this constant, and that's why our fight is so pitched on our channel against this racism charge, is because that's been their ace in the hole. They'll call us a racist, and then they say, well, why are you listening to him? He's a racist. And there was a really interesting thing that happened on a Scott Adams show. I believe it was the show, not today, but I think it might have been yesterday. And somebody had he had been trying to deal with this company. They wanted to do some tribute to him or something like that. He wasn't really that interested in it, but they were putting money into it, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they stopped doing it, and he was notified they stopped doing it because somebody had told them that he was a racist. And Scott Adams he identifies as on the left, but he's always knocking the gaping holes in the logic of the left. So his audience has now become almost entirely conservative. So what he said is, they think I'm racist. I'm not even a Republican. And then he caught himself, because he realized that was the old programming from his thing, where he thinks, I'd have to become a Republican, then I could become a racist. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're so silly. I'm not even a Republican. How can I possibly be a racist? And he said that right on a show that he quickly corrected himself, because he realized, I just said that dumb thing in front of all this huge audience. Right. But it's that deep in the minds of so many progressives that there is this connection between white supremacy and the Republican Party.
Right.
And as you have so well researched and shown in so many videos, it's exactly the opposite.
That's right.
I mean, we are really the party of not Ronald Reagan, of
Abraham
Lincoln.
We're the party of let everybody do their thing. We're the party of freedom. We're the anti-slavery party. And I'm a registered independent, because there's a ton of things I hate about the Republican Party. I hate that we always talk about not spending money, and that the left spend too much money, and then when we get in office, we just keep spending money. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, right? That made me switch to be an independent. But yeah, the racism charge is their go-to, and they're going to keep doing it. Dave, check out YouTuber Tim Pool and his IRL broadcast. We know Tim Pool. We don't know him.
Yeah.
He's all about the communication. Would love to see you on his show. Yeah, I'd love to be on his show.
Hook me up.
Tim,
Tim
let him
Pool
know.
Is another really good example of a guy who attempts to go straight down the middle. But but go to Tim Pool's page, because I did this the other day. I've kind of been writing this piece about how people like Scott Adams and Tim Pool and Dave Rubin and other people, if they start questioning the left, their left-wing viewership just drops away to nothing, and people come in to fill it in are the Republicans, and we allow Tim Pool, for the most part, to not be a Republican, but Democrats do not allow him to not be a Democrat. So it's the thing. So if you look at his stuff now, it's all anti-Democrat stuff, and then you look at all the comment threads, and it's all anti-Democrat comments. He is, in our view, in his viewers' minds, he is a champion of the right, even though he says he's not on the right. Scott Adams says he's to the left of Bernie Sanders, and every show, an hour long, he rips apart the left. And this has happened with so many people over there. Brett Weinstein, who calls himself a progressive, and his wife calls himself a progressive. They all through 2020, They were taking apart the idea of no cops. They were taking apart the idea of Black Lives Matter. They were taking apart all the COVID stuff. They were taking apart the censorship around COVID. And all of this stuff was against the left. Our greatest heroes, the right, are lefties who can dare to be honest. So when I dare to be honest a little bit over here, how come I'm getting thrown out? Like how come we're throwing away every conservative who the left will actually listen to? Sorry, we're going to get rid of them because they're not purists. Purism is a real problem on both sides.
That's true.
You know, I mean, I'm less effective now. I have less reach because I didn't buy into a narrative that I felt didn't hold up to logic. Plain and simple.
Right.
So now I have half the influence I did before. That's suicidal.
Well, the other side of that too, I think, is
not that I'm that important, but it happens to anybody.
But I think that another
right who stands up.
I think something important to explain about that is when I believe something that, let's say, some of our audience doesn't believe, or you don't believe, we disagree on things.
Yeah, you're wrong sometimes. I know.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, I know that I can be wrong about things. So this is how I'm viewing this. This is how I see it. This is what I think. And this is what I'm putting out there because this is how I believe it and this is how I see it.
Right.
But just like an umpire at a baseball game, sometimes you call strike 3 and then you watch a replay and you go, you know what? That was actually a ball. I called a strike. I saw a strike. I saw the guy get tagged out, whatever it is. So if we disagree on something, okay, we disagree on that. I might be wrong. You might be right.
Right.
That's okay. Right.
Yeah, right.
And so let's say something, Dave says something and you go like, Dave, you're so wrong on this. Maybe he is wrong on this, but this is how he sees it.
Right.
And we can learn something from someone's wrong opinion. I've even learned something. I said something and someone said, oh, I thought he meant this. And I was like, you know what? This one of the guys coming, I was like, I think you're right. I think he didn't mean that. I misunderstood that. And other times they say, oh, you misunderstood. It's like, no, I didn't. Here's why I don't think I did. And we got to have that conversation, but we got to be able to be free to say, no, I see it differently. I see it like this, without everybody going like, well, he's gone. Let's get him out of here. He's the wrong person to be talking now. We don't want to listen to him. It's like, no, you've learned. I've learned a lot from a lot of people that I agree with mostly.
Right.
But some of the times they say stuff and I go, I don't see it that way.
Well, the thing that got me in trouble was in the election. What I said was the fraud was in media for 4 years. I spent 4 years battling the fraud in the media, as did Jason.
That's right.
Our whole channel was based on battling the fraud, the anti-Trump fraud, and trying to give the guy a chance to do his thing. But then the narrative switched over to, oh no, it was all these voting machines. It was this, that. These were designed by, in Venezuela. All these things that held no water, that didn't make any sense. So I said, we are a minority party. They were hugely. They outnumber us, and unless we pull the middle, we cannot win. And that's exactly what happened. They turned out in giant numbers. We turned out in giant numbers. The middle went to them by 13% national. Of course we lost. We lost. And was there some minor fraud? Absolutely. There always is. If you have any system, there's some minor fraud.
And there might be more fraud in this election.
So then a month after I said all that stuff and people started ripping on me and stuff like that, then Jordan Peterson and Douglas Murray had a discussion. And they both said virtually exactly what I'm saying. And I'm going, well, thank you. And then I read the comments on that. And they're saying, I used to think Jordan Peterson was great. Right. Now they're throwing Jordan Peterson away. I mean, he's one of the smartest guys on the planet. And a close second is Douglas Murray. And they looked at it for a month longer than I did and came to exactly the same conclusions that I did.
But here,
But they're now wrong.
But no, I'll reiterate this.
And who's right? Sidney Powell?
No. But my point is still the same. My point is still the same. I can understand how you look at some, the voting all stopped at 10:30 at night or 11:30 at night and paused and all stuff. Like, I can understand how you feel like the election was stolen. I get it. And if you believe that, I understand it. That's totally fine with me.
Sure.
Right? And I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm going to tell you what I think happened.
Like you and I disagree.
Right. We disagree. I think there was more fraud than you do. Right? But I don't think it was as big as the machines changing votes and all this kind of stuff.
I think it's massive fraud, but it was taking place in the media.
And it definitely happened. We agree on that
right?
for sure. We agree on that for sure. We've talked about that. Someone wrote Sidney Powell was on crack, not the Kraken. That's a great point. She's still talking about the Kraken. But the point is, I might come up with a conclusion about something that I've looked at for a long time. I might spend, a month researching something and thinking about it and do it, and then do my piece and put it out there. And then a year from now, I see someone like a good thinker, I would say like Thomas Sowell, talk about the same issue, and he'll say something, I'll go, well, I guess I was kind of wrong on that one, or whatever.
Right. And so you just kind of quietly change your mind.
Well, you change your mind, but the point...
I do that all the time.
The point is, there was nothing negative that came from me saying what I thought about it. He thinks that one thing, maybe some of you guys think differently, and that's okay. You say, well, you know what, I disagree on that video, Dave, but man, did you disagree with him on his feminism series? Did you disagree with him on Alabama versus
whatever.
Those old ones?
Right, Islam.
Like Islam, like no, you didn't.
No, that's what
you learned something from those videos. So
that's why I called it. That's why I referred to it as a cult of personality, because it stopped being about conservatism and it started being about one guy who does a certain version of conservatism, which is highly influenced by show business. And it may be I haven't watched any TV since 2012, right? So I threw away all my televisions in like 2011. And so I never saw The Apprentice, but I'm guessing that one of the reasons that Donald Trump got so many people onto his side is because they watched him on The Apprentice. And these people then turned into Trump supporters they were a Trump fan base as opposed to being real conservatives. And then they go, okay, we know people on my thread that were barely conservative at all, and they got, over time, they became more and more Trump centric, and it became more and more about the man himself, and he made them feel empowered. And now they're down all kinds of friggin' rabbit holes.
Well, I think you made a good point about this earlier. It was like they were so dishonest against him, it made you have to take up for him. Then that made you want to take up for him more, and it built on. So then it'd be the next thing.
Then it becomes your tribe,
right? So I think that happened, and I think the reason, I don't know about the TV show and how much influence that had, and it obviously had some, but I think when Trump first stood up there and was willing to say things that conservatives have been saying for a long time, and he was unapologetic about it, I think that was when a lot of people was like, you know what? This is my guy. He's willing to say something.
Totally.
I think that was huge...
that's why you and I were so enthusiastic in our support for him early on, because he'd do it all, like the thing he said about NATO, and all of a sudden, we're all rethinking the whole idea about NATO, and it's like,
and China.
And China.
That's right.
Exactly. I think that's going to be his great lasting legacy. That's why I'm focusing on China so much. He got me to really pay attention to China. That's going to be a huge part of his legacy. So, just the thing is, support the ideas. Don't get so focused on the one guy. And I also think there's a little of this going on. I think Trump got slightly gaslighted by his own fans, where they were throwing everything out there, and he's got a big ego. He wanted to believe he won. So suddenly they're throwing all these things at him. I read an interview with Bill Barr, and Bill Barr was saying this. He's going, people are throwing everything at Trump, and of course Trump's going to believe those things because he wants to believe that he would win because he's Donald Trump. For Christ's sake, he wins everything.
And he got the most votes in history.
And suddenly
beside this one guy.
So suddenly he's got all of these glad-handers, like they want to be the next Trump. So they're spouting all these things, and they're spouting them back, and they're improving on Trump's kind of theory. they're building it another step, and then Trump adopts it back, and it becomes this little echo chamber between him and his disciples.
That's right.
And in a way, he got gaslighted by his own people
I can see that.
into going further and further into this thing that didn't really have an awful lot of evidence behind it.
Somebody wrote, "Well, you're both wrong." Just one guy's opinion in a chat on a channel that isn't mine. Hey,
Now,
we've both been wrong about stuff. It has to.
Now, wouldn't you freak out if all of a sudden we just both completely changed our minds about everything
There you
based on
go.
this one anonymous comment?
Guys, gals, this is from Dave Beamer again, who stormed the Capitol. I just read that Jacob Chansley, Chewbacca, was transferred to a federal prison, which is so much better than jail, but he's still locked up. What the F? Now, there is something to be said. What you're talking about is about 85% of the people who were arrested, burning down cities, stealing things, busting up cars, throwing rocks and bottles at
Didn't go
police
to jail.
officers. They got their charges dropped or didn't
Yes.
go to jail. And now everybody here is still in jail.
Right.
And
right.
some of these people just were people who even came late to the party, if you will, when it was just wide open, and just walked through the rotunda and then back out, and they go, "Oh, we have you on video being in there when you weren't supposed to be in there."
Right. Then
And that's being driven by the left.
exactly.
For sure.
And you know, I mean, I've gotten some comments as well. Don't listen to Dave anymore because he's a liberal now. And no. I just disagree with you on one point about one particular politician and an election.
That's right.
And I still am just as offended by that and all of the stuff that we did videos about last summer.
That's right.
You know, I'm still as every bit as much a conservative warrior as I ever was. I just think at some point you have to be honest with people. You just don't say, okay, where's the narrative today? I'll be that guy because I get more clicks. You know?
Well, we're obviously not doing it for the clicks, because the clicks aren't coming like they were. The numbers have dropped off. So
Well, you know, it has an awful lot to do with what I did, but you know, I had a lot to do with building the channel, so
it
we'll
dropped.
build it again.
It dropped off before you did that.
A little bit. Yeah.
It dropped off. It's
but
been
then we started really like serious.
it's been a constant thing. It's still going.
Yeah, so I mean, it's
Right.
not as if
Dave
the
just
whole-
wrote, follow back up. Dave wrote, "You can torch a police precinct and it's okay." And obviously it's not okay, but yeah, they're going to let you out because they've justified this thought as, we don't want the focus to be on these people that did this stuff because, you know, they have a reason to be upset, and that's all politics. Right? They use this for politics, and they used it in the election for politics.
Well, absolutely.
And
they really had nothing to pin on Donald Trump until, and I wrote a video about that. It was November 6th that these jerks who stormed the Capitol, and let's be honest, they're jerks.
Right.
Not everybody who was there by any means was a jerk.
most people.
And I don't think I listened to what Donald Trump says. It was, tell you, not his greatest speech. It was pretty damn dull and hard to get through. But I did listen to it all. I did not hear him say anything resembling storm the Capitol.
That's right.
And so obviously it was in no way an insurrection. You don't send people, unarmed people, disorganized, to create a coup on the greatest, most heavily harmed country in the world's history. That's just not done. This was a bunch of Q people. It was a bunch of rabbit hole people who don't have any brakes. They're not politically minded. They're not strategically minded. And so, and they gave the Democrats exactly what they wanted. Finally, some proof that Trump supporters are violent idiots. And at all the rallies, they'd wanted us to believe that. They'd wanted everybody to believe that his supporters were violent idiots. And it never showed up. Every rally, the people cleaned up their trash and left it cleaner than it was when they got there. Everybody behaved themselves. Black people would show up and everybody would say, "Hey, come meet my friends." You know, none of this stuff was there. And then at the very end, they're not Trump supporters. They're trolls hiding behind the great big orange terror, right? They wrecked it for everybody. And they wrecked it in Georgia as well. And, you know, so we should not be paying any lip service to these idiots. I mean, who's this Chewbacca guy? A guy that shows up dressed like Chewbacca? and breaks something at the Capitol, I got no problem with him being in jail. But I also want the guy who throws a firebomb at a police station also to be in jail.
Well, we want them to be treated fairly under the law.
Exactly.
No matter who they are, no matter what they've done.
Exactly.
Right? That's the thing. That's what our side wants.
Exactly.
And their side doesn't want that. A lot of people on the left, they're using it. It's all political on the left all the time. I just have to say, Lee Shaw, late to the party, but I'm here. I'm going back to watch. I appreciate you coming by, Lee. Nice to see that you're here. It's a friend of mine from back home. I went to my senior prom with Lee Shaw.
No kidding.
That
was before you started identifying as a man?
Yeah, that's right. Well, Lee is a woman.
Oh, sorry.
Lee is a woman. L-E-A.
Shaw.
Yeah.
I'm glad we made that point.
That's her married name, Shaw. But yeah, I went to prom with Lee.
Well, let me see what she's saying here. Late to the party.
But I'm here and I'm going back to watch.
So Lee,
she says she thinks you're really funny and she likes the live talks.
Oh, so tell us a little inside dirt from Jason's childhood.
Don't you do it.
Come on.
Don't you do it.
His fans want to know.
Don't you do it.
So I think we're probably pretty close to the end here.
Yeah, we got to roll for sure.
I wanted to show you this one picture because, recently you guys were so helpful in sending a bunch of money to Uganda. And so I'm hearing from Julius over there, and he's like running around in a blind panic about COVID now. And it's like, so I looked it up, and like 1,000 people have died in the whole pandemic in Uganda, and there's 40 million people. So it's not as if it's a huge thing, but there's this fear has its own way of, it sort of grows itself. So do you have that picture that I sent?
I do. Let me say thanks, Dave Beamer. He said, you got to run. I'm proud of you both. Keep up the faith. And I'm so happy I could toss you some cash. But you guys who walked in the Capitol shouldn't be in jail since January 6th, right? I think that's right. I think they should be treated fairly under the law, like we just said. And if the law does say that what they did would be that, then great.
Well, it is the people's house.
Right.
And you're allowed to walk into the Capitol if they open and let you in. You're not allowed to break windows.
So here, check out this picture. Here's that picture. It's up right now. Is that them?
Let me just answer this thing.
Okay.
Dave, are you going to put your gig on the 10th on TV so we can see it?
On YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
TY, yeah.
Yeah. Hoping you're having a great weekend. We were going to live stream this, and then I ran into a little issue with the woman who was going to be doing the live streaming. She wasn't answering my calls. She wasn't getting back to me in a timely manner, and I ended up completely in the dark about how it was going to work. And then she got mad at me, told me I was trying to control her. So I had outsourced that job, and the person ended up being hard to work with. And so I pulled the plug on it. We do intend to do some live feeds at later gigs this summer. So I'll let you know about those things. And that was Nimondo, right?
Yeah, Nimondo. And thanks for your support, Nimondo. We appreciate it.
So you have to watch him live at it'll be like 10 in the morning at your place or something like that. Isn't he? I don't know where Nimondo is. Suddenly I think everyone lives in Holland.
It would be night. Well, yeah, it'd be like 4 o'clock in the morning.
But thanks for asking that question.
So here's
Nimondo.
that picture from Uganda. And that's
where is it?
It's right here. It's real small for us right now. But you know the picture.
Okay, look. So they have white like rain boots. They've got full hazmat gear. They've got masks. They've got face shields. They've got rubber gloves. And the person who died from COVID is inside of a box. And they don't even want to touch the box with their gloved hands. And I thought, this has to be a hoax. And so I looked it up. And in fact, that is a funeral in Uganda. Because this was sent to me by Julius, and I checked the picture. So this is what's going on there. This is what we've done to the people who live in countries where they don't have science classes, where they aren't very educated, and they're learning stuff through rumors largely. This is where they are at the end of a pandemic.
Yeah,
they're like this. They're scared to
This is how we
death.
were at the beginning, like in
But we were
Italy.
never that far.
Well, I mean, they weren't using ropes. They weren't afraid to touch the casket.
They were afraid to touch the casket?
Well, they weren't afraid with gloves on, but I'm saying that's how it first started, and I can understand it, but why they're there, but we got to do better than that.
I know this primitive idea of and this so is part of the internet, because I mean, people who aren't getting proper schooling, they probably have a cell phone. They're probably on Twitter. You know, out in the jungle somewhere, they're probably on Twitter. You know, they're getting stuff that, and they're going down the rabbit holes too, because the algorithms, they go, oh, fear response, that gets a high level of engagement. But I just think it's really sad that we have had such poor information and such a fear-driven narrative. You know, Anthony Fauci being the perfect example. He lied to us because he wanted all of the masks to go to the hospitals. He just told us a lie. And then later, they want us to do some more stuff. So now they're going to sell some fear stuff, because they want us to overreact and close down all the businesses, and all the bars go out of business, and all the clubs shut down. But we're trying to save a single life, like Cuomo said, right?
Right, but he was
if
really
we crash
trying
the economy, just save one life, I'll do it.
I mean, with the big email release from Fauci, what we've learned now is that he got an email at like 11:30 at night on January 31st that said they had to look really close, but they believe that it was manipulated in a lab, that COVID was manipulated in a lab. And then an hour later or 2 hours later, he sends out an email to somebody else with this thing, says, yeah, check out this article. It gives you a good overview of what COVID is and how it's basically natural. And so he knew from in the 2 hour span, he went from his best guys talking to them, talking about that, oh, it looks like it's from a lab, to now it's not from a lab, that it's natural. And why would they do that? Did they do it because they have connections to the lab with funding? Do they do it because they have connections to China and money from China? Is it because
or just generally they're afraid that people will become afraid of science? There might be all kinds of reasons.
Right. Well, you should be afraid of people manipulating viruses in labs to make them
This is
more
all the more
dangerous.
reason that science should be completely apart from politics.
That's exactly
and
right.
Heather McDonald has written on this quite a bit, where it used to be that the sciences were free of political influence, but it's not true anymore. And you could see it certainly with the climate change thing.
Absolutely.
Where that you can't get a grant of money to prove that there's nothing wrong with the climate. But if you say, I think there's something really dastardly wrong with the climate, we're all in danger here, can I get some grant money? You'll get your grant money. So it moves people over toward the more dangerous framing of every idea.
Sure.
And scientists, they just want to have money so they can keep doing their work. And if that means they got to leave out the optimistic thing and kind of bring up the pessimistic thing, they'll do it.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. Politics, when it's this much of a crowdsourced thing and it's blabbering all across Twitter day and night.
Well, I think also it has to do with how much power we're letting the government have over us, right? If the government didn't have this much power over us, then they wouldn't have to politicize science. They wouldn't have to politicize every comment. They wouldn't have to say Trump is this, monster, or that Joe Biden's a pedophile, or whatever it might be. We wouldn't have to do these things to try to hurt the other side, because when the other side is in power, there's only so much they can do. But what we're seeing is that they got so much power, they're spending us into oblivion. They're trying to take over, federalize the elections. They're trying to take over everything and make everything, well, so they have to make everything political so they can take over everything. And that's the sad part. If we go back to a time when the Constitution actually stopped the federal government from trying to do things, then there would be no reason to politicize science. There'd only be a reason to try to use science to find the truth, and that's it.
That's very well said. It truly is a question of keeping the government small.
That's it.
That's kind of the key issue, isn't it?
That's everything circles back to that, right? If smaller government allows it's what does Prager say? Bigger government, smaller person.
Yeah, the bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
And that's so true.
That is something to put on a bumper sticker for sure.
Right, and then we'll claim it as ours.
Yeah. Look, by the way, look on the logic.
Dennis got enough money. we'll do it. Senor Nasuno said, "How can you tell the difference between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated people? The vaccinated people are are the nuts still wearing masks?
The vaccinated people are the nuts still wearing. See, now you actually stand in opposition to the vaccinations that were our proudest moment with Trump. If Trump had stayed elected and had got reelected, this guy Signor would be saying, "Yeah, man, I just got my vaccination. Thank you, President Trump." But because he didn't, then he didn't get reelected. So suddenly the left jumped onto vaccinations, and all of the, excuse me, I'm going to offend you, but all of the less objectively thinking Trump supporters went off the vaccinations. I tried to do a video called "To Vax or Not to Vax." I made the video, I wrote the video, and basically I was making the point. This was Trump's finest moment. Trump got us he got science with such a fire lit under their butts that he brought us multiple vaccinations within the course of a single year of us ever having heard of COVID-19. And now it's the people who most believe that Trump had the election stolen that are the most against the vaccines. It's like, what? Stop and think.
I think the only point I would raise about your point
I'm a little
there,
passionate today.
Yeah, no, I think the only point I would raise is that it was our side that weren't very scared of COVID in the first place.
That's a good point to add.
Right?
To it.
So there's a lot of people who go like, "Come on, dude. I mean, I had it. My family had it. We're okay." There's some people who died that had it.
But he's saying that they're the nuts. He's saying a vaccinated person is a nut.
No, yeah, he's saying they're the nuts still wearing masks, right?
The vaccinated people are the nuts.
And we're still, and I told you that today.
You're not vaccinated, but I am.
Well, I had it.
You had it. Right?
I'm vaccinated.
You got vaccinated.
I went the chicken pox route. I went the chicken pox route.
You went into a COVID ward and just made out with some chicks.
My wife wasn't happy about that part, but
well, when you gave it to her and revaccinated her.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I saw something the other day. I was telling you, probably a person in her 20s, and she's walking down the street by herself, and it's like 90-degree weather here. Sun's beating down, and she's got a mask on her face by herself. This was like 4 days ago.
I know.
And she is a nut. Now, is she vaccinated? I don't know what it is, but she's been scared to death. And that's what the left were doing. That's what Democrats were doing about COVID. They were trying to scare. The only way they could make it reasonable that we shut down society for a year or for as long as they wanted us to was for enough people to think they were that scared of this disease.
But you know, the point I wanted to make about that Vax video, not only did YouTube demonetize that, this was a pro-vaccination video aimed at the conservative batch of people who is suddenly anti-vaccination.
Giving Trump credit for the vaccination.
I gave Donald Trump credit for it. I called it almost miraculous that he pulled this off. This is his proudest achievement, we thought, in October, and suddenly you're all against the thing. And so I was saying, get vaccinated. You know, go ahead, get vaccinated. This came to us under the auspices of Donald Trump. And
what happened to that video?
YouTube blocked that video because their algorithm saw conservative channel saying something about vaccinations, and they assumed that it was an anti-vaccination video. You have any other explanation?
No. They deleted the video.
So now they believe conservatives to be anti-vaxxers.
They deleted the video.
That used to be a hippie thing. That was a freaking hippie thing.
I had a guy on my video when I talked about the lab leak theory the other day. He wrote, even these fools wouldn't even talk about it until now. And it's like, yeah, we're not allowed to talk about it. That's the thing. We've had videos that just get erased. And it just says, sorry, you can't talk about this. And it's not that we don't want to talk about some things. There's some things we can't talk. There's some things that don't make us, what little money we do make don't make us any money. And there's some things that we can't talk about. You talk about it, they say, sorry, Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Well, Brett Weinstein was way out ahead of the pack, and he is a biologist, as is his wife. And they were talking about these things and reading through the literature. And he was saying from almost the beginning, he was going, well, okay, you've got a virology lab in Wuhan and suddenly you have this thing that obviously had remarkable gain of function, because not only did it go from supposedly from animals into humans, but it went in such a form that it was able to then move from human to human. So this is a remarkable gain of function. And so he said, this we have to keep this possibility, lab leak, on the table. This has to be one of the things that are considering. And Fauci and everybody was just squashing that narrative. And so he was very strong again. Now they're beginning to let that go. And now they're trying to kill Brett Weinstein because he has been a supporter of what's that drug?
Ivermectin.
Ivermectin, because he's been saying that he and his wife researched ivermectin. They found it to be safe, and he's been on it for months, and he is opting not to be vaccinated, but not because he thinks it's deadly, because he's not sure. He just wants to hang out there for a while, and so he's kind of on the side of the anti-vaxxers here in a sense.
Right.
But now they're trying to censor him for his videos about ivermectin. They're trying to throw him off YouTube for that. And so in a few months, they'll back down on the ivermectin thing, probably.
Right. Well, it's the same with the hydroxychloroquine, is the same thing. I mean, you remember...
It's control freakery is what it is, right? It's just they want to control the narrative.
When Trump said he took hydroxychloroquine, they were telling him he was going to die. There are the media and the people saying, "Are you kidding? You're going to die." Just imagine all the people that have taken it for malaria are going like, "Oh, are we going to die too? What's going?" No, like that. Just like that lady came out and talked about treating patients with hydroxychloroquine, that their website was taken down,
right.
All that stuff, right? It's they got to control that information.
Well, you remember when that state senator in Detroit, in the Detroit area in Michigan, black woman, and she was treated with hydroxychloroquine, and she was in pretty dire shape when she went into the hospital, and she turned around immediately, and she came out, and she's a Democrat, and she came out and she said, "I want to thank Donald Trump for giving my doctors the idea to try that, and you know, it sure helped with me, you know," and she was censured and virtually driven out of Michigan politics simply because she thanked the president for turning her on to this drug that apparently her doctors believed enough to go ahead and try with her.
Yeah.
And it's just like this whole COVID-19 thing put together with, there's no way any of this would have happened if this were not an election year and if people did not have this pitched hatred of Donald Trump. It might have still been an epidemic. It might have still been a pandemic. There might have still been some closures, but I can't. It would have been nothing like that. There might have still been some protests over George Floyd, but there's no way we would have had a solid
700 of them or whatever it was.
All of this has to do with just this intractable hatred that the left holds for the right.
Josh wrote, "Have you considered moving to Odyssey, Rofkin, or Locals? I'd rather support you without YouTube getting their cut or demonetizing you." Well, what's Odyssey?
I haven't heard of Odyssey, but these things, they pop up a lot.
If you don't want YouTube to get a cut, you can
Jason
go to,
and I actually have a friend who was one of the guys that built Locals. And he wanted us to join up on that early, and that's Andrew.
Oh, okay.
And he wanted us to join up on that early. And I myself don't particularly like these pay services. And also, it would be one thing if we went over to Locals. It's a prescription service, so nobody can watch your stuff there unless they pay a fee. And I'm swamped by having to pay. For the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, all these papers that I have to subscribe to, it's a big chunk of my income goes out every month just so I can stay knowledgeable about these things. And so I don't like the paywalls very much. But the worst thing is we are right now, YouTube, love it or hate it, we are in the big leagues. We're not a big fish in the big leagues, but we're as big as we are because YouTube brought us there. They're not perfect. And but they built this giant platform and grew it to the place where Jason and I could step onto an already moving train.
That's true.
And if we step off of that and went to Rumble or one of these places, we got no audience over there.
Right.
And so we're going to have to keep watching it over here. But if we do that, and then all of those people start going over to Rumble where we don't make any money, or locals or whatever, and they're watching it in small groups of people, it just dilutes our impact. That's my thinking on it. Is that?
I think that's a good point. I mean, YouTube is where the biggest audience is. If we're going to have the biggest impact, we'd have to be where the biggest audience is, right? And then if you look at someplace like Rumble, that's maybe we could go to Rumble and build a big audience and do everything, but there it also would be very, very more echo chambery, let's say, over there than it is here. But I don't know what to do exactly, right? I don't know what we've been flying by the seat of our pants since this has begun. And
we're a couple of blue-collar guys who joined into an existing marketplace of ideas and actually made some impact. I mean, I have people all the time tell me, I listen. These are people who were like ripping on me a few years ago and go, I've been listening to your stuff, and I got to admit, you make a good point on a lot of things. Still don't agree with you on everything.
Yeah.
But you make a good point on some things. So, I mean, we're there where everybody can see us. And, we've had some months where we actually made a pretty good living.
Yeah, we had a
little run there.
The election,
back in the good old days.
the election was good for us. Was good for YouTube in general. Like, how advertising works is, if more people are watching, and more people are advertising, the dollars get bigger for the advertising on the videos. And so during the election, there was a lot of people advertising apparently. And that made
the ramp up. Plus, we had, people are interested in COVID. People are interested in all the rioting. There was an awful lot of stuff to talk about. I mean, we were getting really, really sick of talking about COVID, and we were really getting sick of talking about rioting.
Yeah.
But now, I wish we could talk about something that people would watch the video.
Kind of, but at the same time, I mean, it's hard to talk about Biden in a way because Biden is just so boring.
Well, I have my dear friend Alexia. She's a college professor, and one of the things she has to do is she has to make videos, right? So she makes videos for teaching videos. So I'm at home some nights, I'm making a video, and she's at home and she's making a video, and then I'll go, yeah, nobody watched it. I'll be lucky to get 25,000 views, whine. And she goes, yeah, basically my class watches my videos, and that's it.
Right.
And I go, okay, I'm sorry. I was being ungrateful. So when you hear me complaining, I'm cranky at the people who are prejudicial toward me because I disagree with them, and they won't pay attention to the fact that I agree with them on 90% of the things, and that I am still a warrior for the conservative cause, and that hurts my feelings, and it bothers me, and it also bothers me to be the low earner on our channel. I used to be the important one, and now it's Jason's channel, and I'm the other guy.
Yeah, no. What you were saying earlier, a guy at work was
followed from the heights.
A guy at work said, "Did you release a video recently?" I said, "Yeah, this morning." It was about 8:30 in the morning now, so it's been out for a couple hours. I said, "It's not doing very well." And he said, well, how many views you got? I said, about 8,000 views. He's like, you released it this morning, it's got 8,000 views? Holy crap. And I was like, yeah, I should think of it like that. It's hard to, it's all relative. You know what I mean? It's all relative.
I have reset because, over the summer we were averaging about 50,000 views on videos because we were getting some pretty big ones, and we were just the normal ones were 45, something like that. So we were averaging right around 50,000 views, and now my videos are averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 views, and yours are averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of
35,000,
something
maybe.
like that. And some of it's ego, and I'll admit, because I never really ever had this kind of attention before. And you get that kind of attention, and
sure,
you get, I just talked to a friend's wife this morning, and she's a liberal, and she's going, "You're like a star. My family knows who you are." And I think, wow,
I can't go anywhere.
And suddenly she's looking at me like, I like you now. and she's, you know, she's a friend's wife, and she's always kind of like put up with me. And now she kind of likes me because of the success.
Somebody
and
else
I go,
likes
don't
you,
worry,
yeah.
I'm not as popular anymore. You know, but
That's right. We can't go anywhere in public. We just get swamped. It's like Michael Jordan.
I was never popular as a kid, right? And then I play guitar a lot, I'd sing songs and things like that, and I never really broke through or anything like that. And so it's like, you know, there's this little bit of kind of a version, even though it is the type of celebrity where people feel free to tell you to screw off, you know, like that. So it's a kind of a celebrity. And now my celebrity is waning, and it does
celebrity's waning.
It does bother me a little bit. I have to admit, it bothers me a little bit. So, and some of that's ego, but it's not all ego. There's also the real genuine desire to stop the drift into a bunch of ideas that Jason and I agree, in spite of our disagreements, are really, really bad for the future of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And now I am having less and less ability to be a fighter in that game. And so.
Okay, a couple comments here, and we got to run, guys. 2 hours is the longest one we've ever done.
Man, has it been that long?
Yeah, it's when you're having fun, man. He hadn't been up in a while, so I chalk it up to that. But Miriam Bertram wrote, do they hate Trump because remarkably a billionaire is closer to the people and them controlling their lives? Yeah, I think that's true. I think they couldn't believe he got such a connection with the blue collar people because they were the party. The Democrats were the party of the blue collar people. They
yes.
thought.
Yes,
I think that's a great point.
I think it's a really good point, and I think, you know, he represents everything in a nutshell that they hate. He is a rich, white male with a supermodel wife. It's like their nightmare world, and he scooped the working class out from under them, which they believed the working class they were owned as much as they believed black people are owned.
That's right.
So I think you're very astute.
And she made another comment here. The decline, talking about, I guess, our channel, is due to being sad about the future of our country, where it is okay to steal an election. We talked about the election stuff earlier, but I definitely think that's a huge part of it. Is everybody, all of us, you guys that watch our channel, all of us, we put so much energy up into the election, up through that summer. We worked so hard. You guys were spreading the word. We were all talking to people, trying our best, and then we got the wind knocked out of us. It was really...
Yeah, all of us did. You did, we did.
It was really tough, and I think that's a big part of it. There's a lot of people who said, you know what, I'm done with the stress right now. Let me watch videos of people falling down. That makes me happy.
And I watched motorcycle videos for 2 months.
There you go.
As you well know.
Yeah. So I think that's a great point.
I know Jason was watching a lot of breastfeeding videos, because the thing is, we share a channel, so I see his feed. So he's very interested in potty training.
Well, I got a 2-year-old and a baby on the way, so
you should see his daughter. She's like all of a sudden she's like a complete human being.
Growing up. We're
gonna drag her in.
She's telling us to go now a lot. She's 2.5. She's already potty trained. She sleeps through the night, potty trained. She's sleep trained, and now she'll be like, I gotta go pee pee, and you said, you need help? I don't need help. And she's trying to walk and try to peek at her. She'll be like, go, daddy, go. She'll be in there by herself because she's a big girl now, and she wants to use the potty by herself.
Right.
Until she'll wash her hands by herself, do the whole thing. And, you know, if you try to check on her, make sure she's doing everything right and not flooding the bathroom or whatever.
Daddy, stop mansplaining.
Go. Yeah, that's where it's headed. You know?
I don't need your patriarchal attitudes, Daddy.
But it's kind of cute. It's kind of cute to see her. She's starting to get a little bit sassy.
Right.
And it's kind of cute to see, but it's also like foreboding, I guess, in a way, because I know where it's going.
Well, there's this one bit of fatherly wisdom that I was smart enough to pick up because of understanding the dynamic that of humans and the dominance hierarchy a little bit. Is my son was 5 years old, and he completely defied me one day and just said, he goes, no. And he had never told me that when I gave him a direct instruction. He'd never just turned around, dug his feet in, and he's like, he's down here. I'm here. He's down here. And I felt such a swell of pride because I knew what he was doing was he was showing the greatest amount of balls that he ever got. I'm like a godlike figure to him. Not only could I knock him across the room if I wanted to, but all of his support comes out of myself and his mother. And here he is, he's just standing tall and I had to go in the other room and I go, this kid is going to be awesome. Like that too. And then I had to go back in there. That was me telling my wife, I'm so proud of him. Then I go back in and made him do what I asked him to do.
Yeah.
But I felt, all right, he's going to be all right, because he knows who the boss is, and he has the guts to stand up against it.
Yeah.
So that's what your kid's doing now. So no wonder you're getting a kick out of it.
She said the other day, my wife said something to her, and she's like, "Mom, drink your water." Go drink your water. It's like, oh, okay, sure.
She sounds like my daughter. She's a little dominant, right?
She's and she's a lot older and smarter than she seems like she should be at this age. Like when we compare her to our friends and kids and so on. And I don't know if that's anything we've done right or whatever, but she's really starting to come into her own here at 2.5, and it's kind of fun to watch. She's starting to say full sentences now. And
my daughter was very dominant when she was young. We both made the decision to have the daughter first, and then a couple years later, you have the son.
That's what we try to do.
And it's so good because the daughter will help a great deal with the son. And my daughter was always very, very, she was very confident, and she was sort of dominant among her friends. And I talked to her very, very early on, and I said, honey, you have the ability to manipulate people, right? And she looks at me like, she busted. And I said, that's fine. Just don't do evil. Just don't be bad to people. You're going to go ahead and get your way. And then when you do, make sure that your way includes the well-being of other people as well. And I think she's always stuck to that, because she could really mess with people. She's dominant enough to do that, but she doesn't. She's a good person.
That's awesome.
Instead, so that's a good thing for a kid to be strong, and just along the way, make sure they say, strength is something that you have to use to help others as well. So
I agree. All right. Well, I think we got to get out of here, guys. I know some of you are still having a conversation on the side there. I think
can we just leave the stream and just walk out of the room and never come back?
Just leave it on.
The stream will be like 10 hours later, and there'll be people in there fighting.
It'll see the wife come in doing the laundry, and us taking the recycling out. No, I think it was a good time today. We appreciate anybody.
I'm sorry if I get a little. I was getting some stuff off my chest today, so I'm sorry if I got a little over passionate about certain topics.
No worries. Passion is a good thing, but we'll see you guys maybe in a couple more weeks. And have a happy Independence Day, guys.
And hopefully I'll see a few of you in Pasadena on the 10th, a week from today, right?
Yeah, he posted a video earlier today about it. If you guys are in the area and want to go check it out, he'll talk to you guys after the show and hang out with you before the show, maybe take some pictures, that kind of stuff, because he's a celebrity, Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm having trouble selling those last 20 tickets.
This last 20 tickets is tough, But yeah, and then definitely you're definitely going to get his live music going where it can be live for you guys to watch if you guys are ever interested.
We're working at that. We're working at that, and we've got great tools for that these days. So I'm going to learn that skill and make it happen, because I know a lot of you guys, some of us, we all know somebody who can't get out of the house.
Right, and they're just not in California. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, they've got that going for them. That's a plus.
How is J.C. Brigda going to come to Altadena and watch a show? She's just never going to make it. It's a little too much.
So now we call her J.C. Brigda, and now she's going, they're getting that wrong too.
Yeah, I know, right?
She's like something entirely different.
Like, it's Bridge. I misspelled it. No. All right, guys. Thank you all so much for the donations and the chats. We appreciate it. And
all right, what's Brad saying?
Have a happy.
Sorry, I had to go earlier. Editing a video for charity. That's the guitologist. He's our friend. Are any of our other friends up here that have happy 4th to you, Brad? Appreciate you, man. Yeah. Brad's got a great channel.
Yeah,
he is one of my favorite. He's such a straight down the middle, real American. You know what I mean?
Gotta love those guys.
Yeah, there's just no pretense in the man at all. All right, guys.
All right, we'll see you all next time.
Talk to you later.
Appreciate it. Happy Independence Day.